Doamnelor și domnilor, bună seara și bine ați venit la evenimentul de lansare Samsung Galaxy S6 și S6 Edge. Sunt Cristian Onețiu și sunt life coach, autor și antreprenor. Astăzi avem un prim invitat extraordinar. Un om care și-a făcut un blog acum câțiva ani și acum are 2 milioane de vizitatori. În fiecare an, acești vizitatori hotărăsc unde va trăi pentru 4 luni din 12 dintr-un an. Este un călător permanent, un antreprenor și un om care a scris 30 de cărți până acum. E tânăr, e frumos, domnișoarelor, doamnelor, aveți atenție, domnilor, pregătiți-vă. Dați-mi voie să-l prezint pe invitatul nostru special de astăzi, Colin Wright.
Thank you very much. So, like you said, my name is Colin Wright, and I'm an author and I'm an entrepreneur. And I move to a new country every 4 months. I've been doing this for about 6 years. But I'm originally from a place called the US, which you've probably heard of, but less likely that you've heard of the state that I'm from, which is Missouri. It's located somewhere in there. Nobody's really sure. It's in what we affectionately call the flyover states. And now that you know that, actually, you know more about American geography than most Americans, so congratulations, you learned something tonight. But growing up in this type of place, especially when I was young, it took a very long time for culture to reach the center of the country from the coasts. It was very homogenized and very conservative, and as a result, I had to kind of look inward for the type of cultural experiences that I wanted with introverted activities. And so I played a lot of video games, and I was reading a lot of books, everything that took place within this amount of space. And as a result, it was a huge surprise when they told me that I was nearsighted, and I actually couldn't see anything past that amount of space. So I could see the book perfectly, but I couldn't see anything past that. And so I went to the eye doctor, and they told me I needed glasses. And this was my perception of what glasses was going to mean for me. It was going to be this big, bulky thing on my face, this wall between me and the world that would keep me from achieving all the things I wanted to achieve and seeing all the things that I wanted to see. But very fortunately, it couldn't have been further from the truth. And not only did it help me see, it took my entire view of the world from something like this to something like this. And on the way home, I said to my mother, "Oh my God, there's spaces between the trees. I can see the bark. I can see the leaves on the trees." And these were things that were always there. But now because of this technology, I could see it more clearly. I could experience the world differently. And those glasses, that technology, helped me see the world more clearly. And I'd like to tell you 2 quick stories, one that takes place before I started traveling and one that took place right after, that relate to this topic of technology allowing you to see the world more clearly, allowing you to experience things in a different way. And the first story takes place in a different part of the United States, a place called Los Angeles, which you might have actually heard of. And in university, I started my first business when I was 19, so I was able to get a lot of job opportunities, and I took a job out there for a year and then quit and started up a branding studio. And my philosophy for branding was that you should tell a story and tell it clearly and tell it in such a way that the audience you want to reach understands and gets why it's important. They understand you. And this worked really well for me, it worked really well for my clients, and it ended up resulting in a whole lot of money, way more money than I thought I'd be making at that age. And as a result, I did the work hard, play hard type of lifestyle, that quote-unquote American dream, where you're making a bunch of money and spending just as much on toys and gadgets and gimmicks. And I was working myself like crazy. But I met some really interesting people, including a girl that I ended up dating, who was also an entrepreneur. And we lived that champagne lifestyle together for a while. We moved in together, got a townhouse by the beach. We had people over for wine and cheese, which seemed like a really fancy thing to do at the time. But we were kind of working these extended hours, 100 hours a week, 120 hours a week. It was nuts. And although things looked perfect from the outside, we would send postcards like this to all of our friends and family in other states so that they could see even the weather was perfect for us. It looked perfect, but there were cracks. Just like anytime something seems too perfect, there was cracks in the foundation. And for us, it was this work ethic, where we were working 100 hours a week, 120 hours a week, sleeping maybe 3 hours, and then waking up and doing it again. And as a result, we lived together, but we never saw each other. That was insane. That wasn't the lifestyle that we wanted. So we talked about it, and we figured out, well, maybe we need to recalibrate a little bit. And we decided that we would take a vacation. And I was really excited about this for two main reasons. One was that I would get to see this girl that I really cared about for the first time in what seemed like a long time, and we wouldn't have any work to do for this week that we'd be gone. But I'd also wanted to travel for my entire life. I'd wanted to go out and explore things and see other cultures and see other people's storylines. And I hadn't had the chance because starting a business young, I always had more important things to do. And I kept putting it off when my friends and family would go visit these other countries. So this was going to be my opportunity. And so we made the decision we would take a week off and we would go travel internationally. And so we hopped in the car and drove up the coast to visit the exotic land of Canada. And it was very exotic to me because I'd never left the country before. I was that unfortunate American stereotype who had the passport with no stamps in it at age 24. And I was finally able to remedy that on this vacation. And after a wonderful time in Vancouver, we stopped in a city called Seattle on the way back down. And in Seattle, we're sitting in this bar, this kind of underground place that was a converted bakery turned into a speakeasy. And there's like exposed bricks and beams and handcrafted artisanal leather couches. And we're listening to a Latin jazz fusion band spin up on the other side of the room, sipping on our locally sourced gluten-free cocktails. And she leans over and says to me, "You know, I think I want to move to Seattle." And I lean over to her and I just blurt the first thing that comes to my mind and I say, "You know, I think I want to leave the country." And we look at each other. And we look at each other. And we look at each other for what seems like a really long time without saying anything because neither one of us wanted to admit what had just happened. We'd broken up. And at the beginning of our relationship, we were very practical about this. We didn't want to be that couple that sacrificed our hopes and our dreams for the sake of the relationship. We didn't want to stand in the way of both of us achieving what we wanted. And so we finally had to address that because there were things that had been unsaid. And we had a conversation and decided that if we were going to break up, we would do it in style. And 4 months from that day, we would have a breakup party. And we would invite all our friends over to the townhouse, and we'd have dancing and drinks. It would be a wonderful party. And then at midnight, we would change our Facebook statuses to single to make it official. But between Seattle and the breakup party, we had to decide what we wanted to do with our lives. And for me, that meant traveling. And I didn't know what that meant specifically because I had never traveled. I had just gone to Vancouver. That was my first international trip ever. And so the idea of traveling was this big foreign, fuzzy thing to me. I could not figure out how that would happen. And so I did what most of us do when we have a big life crisis on our hands and have no idea where to go next. I started a blog. And I called it Exile Lifestyle. And I started writing about the types of things that I already knew about, like entrepreneurship and branding. And writing about the things that I wanted to learn about, like travel and alternative lifestyles and running a business from the road. And I met a lot of amazing people. I was able to connect with people from all over the world and ask them questions and share what I knew with them, and they shared their successes and failures with me. And as a result, I was able to pick and choose from these different experiences and cobble together something that was more perfect for me, a lifestyle that fit. And as a result of these interactions, I was able to take this photo, which was the first ever photo I took from an international flight and the beginning of a changed lifestyle for me. And this was only possible because of the technology that I had access to. I was able to tap in to the entirety of humanity. I was able to talk to anybody that I wanted to talk to, and people who had lived very different lives than I had, people who lived all over the world in different cultures that I knew the barest rudiments about, and in a lot of cases, nothing at all. And I was able to start learning. I was able to take pieces of what they could share with me and build my own perfect life. I was able to experiment before I'd even left LA and avoid making a lot of the mistakes that a lot of us make. And the first place that I went, which was voted on by these people who had given me all of this advice, 500 strangers on the internet voted for me to move to Argentina. They sent me there, and I moved to Buenos Aires. And it's a wonderful town, if you ever get the chance to visit. Beautiful city. This is a part of it called Boca. But living there, living in Buenos Aires, is a bit like living in New York, in that it gives you a great sense of the city, but you don't get much sense of the overarching culture. Living in New York does not give you a sense of American culture. Living in Buenos Aires does not give you a sense of Argentine culture, because the cultures are just too big, and that's just one city. And I wanted to see more of it. I really wanted to experience the culture as a whole. So I hopped on a series of buses and took a road trip around the country of Argentina. And I got to see a lot of scenes like this, because the country is just full of beautiful mountains and deserts and fields and llamas all over the place. And as I was traveling around to these different towns and cities, one of these people who had voted for me to go to Argentina sent me a message and said, listen, you really, really have to go down south, because you're there at the perfect time, and I have this huge opportunity that you can take advantage of. If you go to Ushuaia, which is the southernmost city in the world, right now, there's ship captains drinking at the bars. And these ship captains are special, they're important, because they're not just captaining normal ships, they're taking the icebreaker ships that go down to Antarctica. And they're all hanging out at this one particular bar right now. And if you go, and if you buy them lots of beer, they will hire you aboard their ships. Which means they won't pay you, they'll give you food and they'll give you a bed, and you'll do menial labor, you'll wash dishes and swab the deck, but you'll also get free passage to Antarctica, which usually costs an obscene amount, $10,000, $20,000. So this was something that I really wanted to check out, and so I hopped a bus heading south, and on the way I stopped in a town called Rio Gallegos, which is a little beach town, and I met two girls, one that was British and one that was Australian, and they had a similar idea that I had. They had heard about this bar and these ship captains, and we decided we would team up. We would go out to the bars and hit 3 different captains at a time to increase our chances that we could get one of these few jobs and go to Antarctica. And so when we arrived in the tiny little town of Ushuaia, the tiny little port town that only has people in it really when these ships are in town, we went and found the bar, and it's the southernmost Irish pub in the world, a place called Dublin, and they sell green beer year-round. And thankfully, this green beer was incredibly cheap, because we bought a lot of it for these captains. All of these men with great big beards and great big coats. They looked like Captain Ahab from Moby Dick. So you could spot them from across the bar, and we'd go up and buy them 5 or 6 beers. And then they'd inevitably say at the end, "Oh, I'm sorry, all the spots on the ship are taken. You're too late." Over and over again. For a week, every night we went out and bought beer for captains, and we didn't find a single job aboard one of these ships. And it turns out the week before, a group of Israelis fresh out of their military duty had arrived, and they had worked as a team too, and they had taken all the jobs. So they got there just before us, and as a result, as all the ships left, we found ourselves still in Ushuaia, this now vacant town, with 2 weeks left to kill and no idea of what to do. And so once again, I reached out to my friends on the internet, these people that I had never met in person, and for all I knew would never meet in person, and asked for advice. And they gave me valuable connections. They connected me with locals. They connected me with different establishments that we wouldn't have heard of, things that are not advertised, some things that are not totally legal, little underground bars and such. And parks outside of town, like the Tierra del Fuego State Park, which is just glorious and gorgeous, and we spent so many of our days hiking around and chasing the wild horses, and just setting up picnics and taking our empanadas and wine and just enjoying the scenery. And they were some of the most enjoyable weeks that I've ever had anywhere in the world, and they would never have happened without these connections. Without the connections from afar, but also the connections in real life. And this is something that technology does for us as well. It connects you with people from all over the world, but also makes the relationships that you have in real life all the more valuable. These people that I had met in Ushuaia, it would have been very, very easy to just meet them and then go our separate ways, because we'll never see each other again, right? And one of the most common questions I get from people is, isn't it lonely to travel so much? Isn't it difficult to say goodbye all the time? And I always tell them, no, actually, not as much as you would think, because we live in the future, and there's no more goodbyes, there's only see you laters. I'm still in touch with all of these people, the 2 girls that I teamed up with, and some of the ship captains, and the people that I met in Ushuaia, and I'm able to be because of little supercomputers that fit in my pocket. These devices and these tools that allow us to live life more fully and more richly, and invest more in our relationships, because they're not temporary. These are relationships that can last as long as we want, whether that means talking to these people every day, or once a week, once a year, or never again, except when you happen to be in the same country, or stuck in a port town looking for something to do. Technology, it doesn't just help you build relationships, it helps you maintain them, and that adds value to everything that you do within them. I've been traveling now full-time for 6 years, moving to a new country every 4 months, and I've had a lot of crazy adventures, things that are very story-worthy. But a lot of my favorite moments and most valuable moments have turned out to be the boring moments, the very mundane things. Visiting my family, visiting my business partners in Montana, traveling to random farms in the middle of the desert, or visiting tacky tourist attractions in the South. Having people show me where they live, wherever that happens to be, whatever that happens to look like for them. Getting to appreciate the diversity of those lifestyles, getting to learn, getting to take trains through the middle of nowhere just for the sake of seeing what's in the middle of nowhere. Getting to walk down streets, foreign or familiar, and getting to look at all the details and the textures and the colors. Visiting every place as if it's new. Visiting your home as if you're traveling. It allows you to notice these things again, and it's enabled by the technologies that we have. It frees us up to take these types of walks and gives us the ability and the tools to connect with them, to find more value in them, to see what was always there, even though it wasn't clear to you before. It's that type of thinking that's allowed me to look at the world that was once complete whitewashed. I had no idea what was out there, and to see just a bunch of homes. Past, present, future homes, places that I'll explore and learn about, and where I'll build connections and relationships. Even the places that I once tried to escape from, like Missouri, which is still located somewhere up there. I love it now. I can go there and I can find new things because I'm looking for them, and I have the time and the tools to find them and share them, to find value and fulfillment in them. And now, as a result of these tools too, I'm able to take what I do for a living, which is write books. I can do this from anywhere. I have the ability to go find inspiration wherever I happen to end up, and I have the ability to take these books and post them and work from anywhere in the world. Something that once required us to be tied to a desk now fits in your pocket. The technology, it allows me to do whatever work I care about, whatever we happen to do for a living. It allows you to do it better, more effectively and more efficiently, and from anywhere in the world that you happen to find yourself. And this is why I'm actually so excited to be here at the Romanian launch of the Samsung Galaxy S6 and the S6 Edge. I've had a chance to play with one of these for the last couple of days. It's remarkable, in addition to being beautiful, and it's exactly the type of technology that I'm talking about. It's an enabler. It's an evolution of certain types of technology that then, as you use it, allow you to evolve as a person. It allows you to grow into a better version of yourself and do the things that you want to do anyway, but do them better, do them disconnected, do them with richer relationships in your life. It allows you, in short, to see both the forest and the trees and to get more out of both and to share what you learn with anybody in the world. Thank you very much.